So I think for these massive societal shifts, they almost have to begin with the elementary and middle school levels so that the students can kind of propagate that through society as they get older.
Welcome everyone to Learn On. This is Jim Sandher with Everfi, and I am super excited today to be speaking with Cameron Beckham, who is a STEM and history educator in Louisiana.
Hey everybody, like Jim said, my name's Cameron. I have been teaching for going on a decade now. I kind of bounce back and forth between the hard sciences with robotics and cyber patriot programming, things like that. I've been an Everfi teacher ambassador here for going on 2 years and super excited to be a part.
I'm really curious to hear if and why you think it's important for students to learn about sustainability at school.
Sustainability is inherently tied to climate change, and we have to migrate towards a more sustainable lifestyle as a species if we're going to start to mitigate these massive challenges that are going to come along with that. The real issue is with sustainability topics is that it's going to require a pretty significant shift in basically every aspect of human life, whether we're talking about building construction or shipping and logistics, or even the foods we consume and how they get to where they're going. One of the things I always like to equate it to is being from Louisiana, I'm intimately familiar with the story of Ruby Bridges, going to the first desegregated school here and what an event that was. Ruby had to go to that school, and that idea that these races could be educated together had to begin somewhere so that it could propagate upward through society and kind of make its way through the old guard. It's the same idea with sustainability to me, that we start it younger and help it migrate through society as best we can, while also reaching out to the ones who are already making the decisions.
Do you have any advice for people who might be new to this, who want to jump in more?
Before studying sustainability, I sent a letter home to parents, and the vast majority in my program knew me and trusted me, but I would still clue the parents in that, hey, we have the sustainability unit coming up. We're going to be discussing climate change and the ramifications. One of the letters in STEM is engineering, and we know the vast majority of challenges that humans are going to face in the future can be linked in some way to climate change. So it's almost irresponsible to ignore that topic when you're in a STEM class with the future engineers of the world. So I try to clue them in proactively to let them know it's coming, so students don't go home to their parents and maybe misinterpret something I said, or just blurt out, hey, we're talking about how climate change is real, and everybody who says otherwise doesn't understand the science. Try to avoid mix-ups like that. Honestly, if I got even the slightest hint that there might be an issue with the students, I would reach out to the parents if necessary. And obviously, if they reached out to me, I made myself available so that we could discuss that stuff. And there were some disagreements on the subject, but I never had a teacher that pulled a student from the class or asked to be excused from the unit or anything.
How do your students respond? Like, do they seem to enjoy learning about the climate and these interconnected systems and things like that?
You have to hook students into a lesson. And when you tell them, okay, we're done with our unit where we learned how to defend computers against hackers, and now we're done with our unit where we built our autonomous robots, and now we're going to talk about the climate. Initially, it sounds a little like a step down to them. So you try to paint some stakes to it and let them know that this is the world you're growing up in, but also walking the line where it doesn't become alarmist and they start to fear for their future. Once they understand that there are a very serious range of problems that are going to be faced, especially by their generation, that have to be solved, but that they are solvable, that they can be mitigated to a certain extent, they start to feel invested, because it really is, even though it's not a problem that their generation created, it is a problem that their generation is going to bear.
I'm curious, what kind of keeps you inspired or excited about teaching this topic?
Honestly, I have to look to people that are smarter than myself, because I have definitely dealt with some existential dread over these things. There are some people in the community who feel like the alarmist approach is the best way to do it, because that will trigger maybe a quicker or a more aggressive response. But on the flip side, you have people like Bill Gates, who is releasing his climate change book, who paints a very optimistic picture about the emerging technologies and fuel sources that can be used and things that we can do that will have radical impacts on emissions across the realm, whether we're talking about transportation or any of the other issues. I really just have to keep searching for the people who say, it's tough, but we can do it.
Is there anything that we didn't have a chance to talk about today that you would like to add before we wrap up?
Anytime I get the chance to talk about this, I do like to just remind people that while we do have a lot to deal with as a society, and obviously the individual impact that you or your family can make isn't going to change the entire world, that particular thought pattern hasn't resonated with me very much, because if you have thousands or millions of families who all think, well, my change isn't going to do it, then you're not amounting very much. Whereas if you have those thousands or millions who feel like, I'm not going to solve this myself, but I can be better, then as a society, we're moving in the right direction.
You inspired me when you were talking about the little things we can all do, because part of my chores today was to go grab my compost bucket from down in the lobby of my building. And I'm one of those people who can be doom and gloom about this, from like, well, if I make this change, it's just a drop in the bucket, no pun intended, for my compost bucket. But then at the same time, I talk with my wife. She keeps me going about this kind of thing. Like, you know what? Because it's not just the fact that we're doing composting. It's then like when a friend comes over and they see the compost bucket and they're like, hey, what's that? Why do you do that? Oh, what's the company you use? Oh, they do that in this neighborhood. Then it starts to actually spread out a little bit more.
A huge function of sustainability, right, is the zero waste lifestyle. We have a compost bin in our backyard, and ours doesn't go anywhere. We actually use it in our gardens. I'm right there with you on that. It's cool to see other people doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time today. This has been such a great interview, and I really appreciate it. I will let you get back to your day. But thanks, everyone, for joining us for this week's episode of Learn On with Cameron Beckham.
Thanks.
Access EverFi's cost-free Sustainability Foundations resource for grades 5 through 8 online at everfi.com/new teacher.